see it.
Listen, I need to tell you this while I still can. You know how my old phone finally died last Tuesday? I went to that little repair shop on the corner. The guy there sold me a used model for cheap. It looked brand new, but it felt heavy in my hand. He didn't even ask for my name or my ID. I just paid cash and walked back to my apartment. The first night was quiet, almost too quiet for the city. I plugged the phone in and went to bed early. Around midnight, the screen flickered to life on my nightstand. It wasn't a notification or a call from anyone I knew. The light was a sickly, bruised purple color I hated. I reached out to flip it over and stop the glow. My fingers touched the glass and it felt incredibly hot. It felt like touching a feverish forehead in the dark. I ignored it and tried to fall back into sleep. The next morning, I found the first photo in the gallery. It was a shot of me sleeping from the ceiling. The angle was impossible because there is no light up there. My face looked gray and my mouth was hanging wide open. I deleted it immediately and felt a cold shiver. I told myself it was just a weird glitch or prank. But then the text messages started coming in from blank numbers. They weren't words, just strings of red and black symbols. They looked like open wounds or rows of jagged teeth. I tried to factory reset the device, but nothing worked. The power button felt like it was fused to the frame. I threw it in the kitchen drawer and locked it tight. But 5 minutes later, I heard it vibrating on the table. It was right there in front of me, dripping wet. The screen was cracked now, oozing a thick, dark fluid. It smelled like old copper and meat left in the sun. I picked it up and my thumb slid into the crack. The glass sliced deep, but I didn't feel any sharp pain. I felt a weird suction, like the phone was drinking. The screen changed to a live video feed of my hallway. I watched myself standing there from the phone's perspective. But I was sitting in the kitchen, not the hallway. The version of me on the screen began to change fast. My skin started to peel back in long, wet ribbons. I watched my own eyes melt into black, oily puddles. The sound coming from the speaker was a wet grinding. It sounded like a butcher chopping through heavy bone. I dropped the phone and ran for the front door. The locks wouldn't turn and the wood felt like skin. I looked back and saw the phone crawling toward me. It moved on. Tiny, pale fingers sprouting from the charging port. Each finger was tipped with a sharp, yellowed human nail. It left a trail of thick, pulsing gore on the floor. I screamed and kicked at it, but my foot sank in. The floor was turning into a soft, red swamp of meat. I am trapped in the bathroom now with the light off. I can hear those tiny fingers scratching at the wood. They are digging through the bottom of the door right now. The phone is whispering my secrets in a wet, gurgling voice. It knows about the mole on my back and my heart. It is telling me how my blood tastes like rusted iron. The gap under the door is widening and turning dark red. I see a finger poke through, then another, then a hand. The air is thick with the scent of a fresh kill. My own skin is starting to feel tight and very dry. I looked in the mirror and my reflection was gone. There is only a black screen where my face should be. I can feel the glass growing under my eyelids right now. It is cold and hard and it wants to see out. I am not me anymore. I am just a signal. The door is breaking and the meat is coming inside. I see the phone rising up on a pillar of bone. It opens its screen like a mouthful of needles. I can't breathe because my lungs are full of wires. Everything is turning into a bright, screaming purple light now. It is beautiful and it is hungry and it is here. Goodbye.
Next story.
Some debts are paid in skin. Don't look up.
You know that old overpass near the industrial park? I used to walk past it every single night. The air there always smells like wet concrete and rust. I saw him every time I headed home from work. He was just a guy living in a cardboard shell. His name was Elias, or so he told me once. He seemed like any other person dealt a bad hand. I started leaving him my leftover sandwiches and some coffee. He was always polite, but he never looked at me. He always looked about 3 inches to my left. His eyes were cloudy and twitched with a strange rhythm. One night, the rain was coming down in thick sheets. I stopped to give him a heavy wool blanket. That is when I heard the whispering for the first time. It did not sound like human speech at all. It sounded like dry leaves skittering across a fresh grave. Elias was nodding his head as if listening to music. He leaned away from a dark corner of his shelter. There was a space where the shadows looked too dense. The darkness there felt heavy, like it had actual weight. I asked him who he was talking to that night. He just smiled and pointed at the empty, black air. He called it his silent partner with a shaky voice. I laughed it off because I thought he was lonely. A week later, I saw something that changed my mind. I saw a stray dog wander into his little camp. The dog started growling at the air beside Elias. Suddenly, the dog's front legs just snapped like dry twigs. There was no one touching the poor animal at all. Blood sprayed across the concrete in a jagged, red arc. The dog was pulled upward by an invisible, massive force. I heard its ribs pop like bubble wrap under pressure. Elias just sat there and started humming a low tune. He held out a plastic bowl to catch the drainage. The blood pooled in the bottom, steaming in the cold. I stood frozen, hidden behind a rusted steel pillar. I watched the invisible thing tear the dog into strips. Wet thuds echoed off the damp walls of the overpass. Chunks of fur and muscle fell into the gray puddles. Elias reached out and stroked the empty, freezing air. He whispered that the friend was finally feeling hungry. The next night, I tried to take a different route. But my car died right near that same concrete bridge. The silence of the street felt like a physical threat. I walked past the overpass with my head down low. I saw Elias standing by the edge of the road. He looked different, thinner, and his skin was translucent. His friend was standing right behind him. This time, I could see the outline of something tall and jagged. It looked like a silhouette made of oily, black smoke that had too many joints in its long, spindly limbs. It dripped a fluid that hissed when it hit pavement. Elias looked at me and his eyes were completely red. The blood vessels in his face had all burst open. He told me his friend liked my specific scent. I started to run, but the air became thick. The smell of copper and rotting meat filled my lungs. I felt a cold hand wrap around my bare ankle. It was not a human hand, it felt like needles. I looked back and saw Elias being pulled apart. His friend was eating him to get to me. Elias's jaw was unhinged and hanging by a single tendon. His tongue was sliced into ribbons by unseen teeth. The thing stepped out of the shadow into the light. It was a column of teeth and wet, pulsing nerves. It wore Elias's skin like a loose, tattered coat. I saw his face stretched over a skull of obsidian. The eyes were gone, replaced by glowing, white maggots. Blood geysered from his neck in a rhythmic pulse. The creature let out a sound like grinding metal. It lunged forward with claws made of jagged bone. I felt my own skin start to peel and burn. The street lights flickered and died all at once. In the dark, I felt its hot, wet breath. It whispered my name with a dozen different voices. One voice sounded exactly like my mother's soft tone. Another sounded like a child screaming in a well. I felt a sharp edge slice across my chest. My shirt soaked through with warm, sticky life. I fell to my knees in the greasy, black mud. Elias's empty skin suit slunk down next to me. The demon leaned in, its mouth opening wide. I saw rows of hooks lining its long throat. It did not want my soul, it wanted my meat. I am writing this from a hospital bed now. They say a person attacked me with a knife. But I can see the corner of the room. The shadows there are starting to move again. The air is getting cold and smells like iron. My friend is back, and he brought his bowl.
Next story.
Some debts are paid in skin. Don't look up.
You know that flea market on 4th Street? The one with the rusted gate. I went there last Sunday morning. The air smelled like wet copper and rot. I found a small brass coin purse. It was shaped like a bloated rat. The metal felt cold and surprisingly heavy. Its eyes were tiny red glass beads. They looked almost white in the sun. The chainmail belly was intricate and dark. I paid $5 to the old man. He didn't even look up at me. He just took the crumpled bill. His fingernails were black with ancient filth. I put the purse in my pocket. It felt like a lead weight. My thigh went numb after 10 minutes. I figured it was just the heavy brass. I got home and threw it down. It made a wet thud on wood. That seemed wrong for a metal object. I sat on my sofa to relax. The house was quiet and very dim. Then I heard a soft metallic scraping. It sounded like tiny claws on floorboards. I looked at the coffee table nearby. The rat purse had moved 2 inches. I laughed it off as a vibration. I reached out to open the clasp. The brass felt warm against my palm. The red eyes seemed to track me. I clicked the small metal spheres apart. The smell hit me like a wall. It was the scent of a slaughterhouse. It was iron and sweet, cloying decay. Inside the mail was not empty space. It was lined with something soft. It looked like gray, waterlogged velvet. I reached my finger inside to feel. Something sharp clamped down on my skin. I screamed and jerked my hand back. A deep gash opened on my fingertip. Blood sprayed across the white lace tablecloth. The rat purse began to hum softly. The chainmail belly started to pulse. It looked like it was breathing deeply. I watched my blood soak into the metal. The brass turned a bruised purple color. The mail links began to stretch out. They looked like skin under high tension. I tried to throw it away then. It stuck to my palm like glue. The red eyes were glowing bright now. I felt a sharp pinch in my wrist. Then I felt a sickening, hollow pull. It was drinking from my open vein. My skin turned gray and very translucent. I could see my own pulsing blue vessels. The rat grew larger with every heartbeat. Its brass limbs twitched and shifted position. I felt its tiny metal claws dig in. They bored into my muscle and bone. The pain was white and perfectly sharp. I couldn't scream because my throat dried. The house went dark as the sun set. I was trapped in my own chair. The rat was the size of a cat. Its belly was engorged and dripping red. Thick, black ichor leaked from the mail. It smelled like a grave in summer. I felt my life draining into it. My vision blurred into a crimson haze. I looked down at my mangled hand. The bone was showing through the meat. The rat let out a high hiss. It sounded like steam escaping a pipe. Its mouth opened to show silver needles. They were coated in my own shredded flesh. I managed to grab a heavy lamp. I swung it with my remaining strength. The ceramic base shattered against the brass. The rat hissed and finally let go. It hit the floor and started running. It moved with a jerky, mechanical gait. It disappeared into the shadows of the hall. I am sitting here bleeding out now. I can hear it scratching the door. It wants the rest of my blood. It is waiting for me to faint. I can hear the metal links clinking. It is growing bigger in the dark. Please come over here right now. Bring a gun and some heavy gasoline. I think it is learning my name. I hear it whispering through the wood. The red eyes are watching the gap. I can see the blood leaking under. It is so much blood for one. My head is getting very light now. I think the door is opening up. Do not look at the red eyes.
Next story.
Some debts are paid in skin. Don't look up.
Look, I need to tell you this. I cannot keep it inside anymore. It was a normal Tuesday morning. The air smelled like damp grass and petrol. My neighbor, Dave, was out in his yard. He was always meticulous about his lawn. The sun was bright and unapologetic. I was sitting on my porch with coffee. The machine roared with a steady, rhythmic hum. It felt like a peaceful, suburban day. Everything seemed so perfectly mundane and safe. Then the sound changed into a wet crunch. Dave was a quiet guy. He kept to himself mostly. He wore those old, stained grass-cutting shoes. The lawnmower was a heavy, commercial-grade beast. It looked too powerful for a small yard. He was pushing it up the slight incline. I watched a crow land on his fence. The bird looked at me with cold eyes. Dave slipped on a patch of wet clover. It happened in less than a heartbeat. His feet went out from under him easily. He slid down the embankment toward the blades. The machine did not stop or even stall. It just screamed louder as it met resistance. I saw his sneaker disappear into the deck. Then came the sound of structural failure. It sounded like a bag of ice breaking, except it was much wetter and more visceral. A mist of crimson sprayed across the white fence. It looked like someone threw a bucket of paint. The green grass turned a slick, dark maroon. Dave did not scream at first. He just looked at his legs with confusion. I dropped my mug and it shattered loudly. I ran toward the fence but froze mid-step. The smell hit me before the visual did. It was copper and hot, steaming iron. The mower was still running over his midsection. It was bucking like a wild, angry animal. Chunks of denim were flying out the side. Mixed with the fabric were bits of white. I realized those white shards were his femur. The blades were dulling on his heavy bones. Each rotation sounded like a wet wood chipper. Dave finally found his voice and wailed. It was not a human sound at all. It was a high, thin whistle of agony. He tried to push himself away with hands, but the ground was too slick with blood. His fingers just slid through the red mud. The mower surged forward over his pelvic bowl. I saw his intestines spool out like gray snakes. They caught in the spinning metal and whipped. Blood was pumping out in rhythmic, thick jets. It soaked his shirt and blinded his eyes. I reached the mower and hit the kill. The engine sputtered and died with a choke. The silence that followed was much worse. I could hear the blood dripping onto metal. It sounded like a leaking faucet in hell. Dave was still breathing in shallow, wet rasps. His lower half was simply a red pulp. There was no shape left to his legs, just a slurry of meat and splintered bone. His belt was hanging from the discharge chute. I could see the yellow fat mixed in. He looked up at me with pale eyes. He tried to speak, but only coughed blood. A bubble of red foam popped on his lips. I tried to find a place to touch. There was nothing solid left to hold on to. His skin felt like wet, sliding parchment paper. I saw a piece of his hip on the grass. It was jagged and white against the red. The crows started to circle lower in the sky. They knew exactly what was on the lawn. The ambulance took 20 minutes to arrive. I sat in the gore and held his hand. His skin went cold while I watched him. The blood started to turn dark and thick. It pooled in the low spots of the grass. I still see the spray on the fence. It stained the wood a deep, permanent rust. Every time I smell cut grass, I gag. I can still hear that rhythmic, metallic grinding, the way the machine chewed through his life. I went back there late last night. The house is empty and the lawn grown, but the fence is still stained dark red. I stood where the mower finally stopped. I heard a low, wet dragging sound nearby. It sounded like heavy meat sliding on dirt. I looked down and saw a fresh trail. A thick, wet smear of blood on grass. It led directly toward my own back door. I looked at the porch and saw him. Dave was sitting in my chair without legs. He was holding a rusted, dripping mower blade. He smiled and his teeth were all shattered. He told me it was finally my turn.
Next story.
Some debts are paid in skin. Don't look up.
Next story is yours. Take a look at the shadow in the corner of your room. Are you sure it was that shape a minute ago? Subscribe or be the next in line.